Today, we're diving into one of the boldest and most shocking chess traps out there, the Belgrade Gambit. Imagine sacrificing a knight on move 4 just to send your opponent into panic mode. The Belgrade Gambit starts with a sudden strike in the center, and then a bold leap forward with your knight. An opening that looks solid on the surface but hides a tricky and dangerous trap underneath. It seems like a blunder, but it's actually a calculated trap. Many opponents will take the bait and grab the pawn on a 4, thinking they've won a free piece. After all, why not take more space and material, right? That's when the trap is sprung. You respond with queen to e2, pinning the knight on a 4 to the king on e8. Now black can't mirror you with queen to a 7 because your knight on d5 controls that square. The usual response for black is to play pawn to f5, trying to protect the pinned knight, but this only opens up their king even more. At this point, you strike again with knight to g5, adding a second attacker to the knight on e4. Now the knight is both pinned and under direct threat. Black's position is quickly collapsing, and they're running out of good options. Let's say they try to push you back with pawn to h6, hoping to force a trade of knights. But instead of trading, you deliver a stunning blow. Queen to h5. This seemingly simple move sets up an instant threat of checkmate. Your knight on g5 covers the crucial f7 square, and unless black can do something drastic, checkmate is coming on the next move. Black might try to regroup and defend with knight to a 7, covering the king and offering a trade of knights, but this doesn't fully solve their problems. And let's be honest, many players, especially at the club level or online blitz, won't find this defense in time. Now captures the knight on a 4, they're now faced with a tough choice. They'll likely try to simplify by capturing one of your knights in return. But if they choose to capture the knight on d5, it leads to a surprisingly quick and devastating checkmate. If they capture the knight e4 with the pawn, then you can play queen to h5 check. At this point, black has two main options: to block the check with either a knight or a pawn. But as is often the case in the Belgrade Gambit, both choices lead to disaster. If black blocks the check with knight to g6, white responds with bishop to g5. And here comes the twist. The queen on d8 is now trapped. Even if black tries to stall, say by making another move first, once white recaptures or continues, the threat remains. Their queen is lost, and the knight is still pinned, unable to recapture the bishop. It's an incredibly nasty trap. Now, what if black chooses to block the check with the pawn to g6 instead? That may look more solid, but then white continues with queen to e5, and suddenly black's entire position is overwhelmed. Here's why. The rook on h8 is under threat. The pawn on c7 is weak and vulnerable to a knight fork. The knight on d5 is ready to jump into f6, launching a direct attack on the king. And don't forget the pin along the e-file, which ties black's pieces down even further. Black is overloaded with threats, and this is exactly what makes the Belgrade Gambit so fun and effective. Even if black tries to find a way out with a defensive move like pawn to d6, the position is far from safe. Their idea is to challenge your powerful queen on e5, force it back, and later capture your aggressive knight on d5. At first glance, it seems like a solid, logical move aimed at neutralizing your attack. But white has a stunning reply that turns the tables completely. Bishop to c4. This isn't just a flashy developing move, it's actually the best move in the position according to engine analysis. It comes with a deeper purpose, to lure black into making a fatal mistake. If black accepts what looks like a free queen with pawn, takes queen on a 4, they fall right into a beautiful mating pattern. White responds with knight to f6, delivering checkmate. The king has no escape, no defenders are nearby, and the coordination between your knight and bishop seals the game. It's a brilliant example of tactical precision, sacrificing the queen not just for shock value, but to finish the game with an elegant, unstoppable checkmate. This sequence showcases the attacking power of the Belgrade Gambit. Even when black tries to defend, one misstep can lead to a swift and brutal end. To recap, this all begins in the 4 knights game. After striking with pawn to d4 and knight to d5, you invite black to overextend. If they capture on e4, you play queen to e2, pinning the knight. Their only defense is pawn to f5, which weakens their king. From there, the tactical storm begins, with pins, forks, and even traps that can win their queen. Now you play knight to g5, increasing the pressure on the already pinned knight on e4. At this point, black might try to defend by playing bishop to a 7, which makes a lot of sense. They're attempting to shield their king and prepare to castle. This is your moment to strike. You finally execute your main idea, capture the knight on e4. In response, your opponent will likely castle, thinking they have reached safety. But it's not that simple. The king is still exposed, with very few defenders nearby, and the threat of queen to h7 checkmate looms dangerously. To defend against this, black must somehow block the diagonal. But you continue the attack by developing your bishop, bringing it into the game with tempo. If black tries to create counterplay with rook to e8, looking for tactics along the open e-file, you calmly castle kingside. Now, you are the one with pressure along the e-file, not your opponent. Even if black attempts a discovered attack, they've overlooked a key tactic, knight to f6, a devastating fork. If black captures the knight, the rook on e8 falls. You've just won the exchange, but it doesn't end there. Their dark-squared bishop is also pinned, and their king is still under fire. You can now freely bring in your rook and bishop for a crushing attack. The position is collapsing. There's one important line that we can't overlook. Engine analysis suggests that the best move for black in this position is the somewhat surprising pawn to d3, a bold counterattack in the center. This move challenges white's control and tries to complicate the position. The good news is that this move is quite uncommon in practice. According to the Lichess database, only about 7% of players use this defense, and those who do are usually rated around 2,100 or higher. So, if you're playing at a lower level, you're unlikely to face this move often, allowing you to focus more on the typical lines where white has strong attacking chances. Even if they play pawn to d3, the position remains highly tactical and balanced. For example, you can capture this pawn with your queen, and if black then grabs your knight on g5, it looks like you're down material until you spring knight takes c7, a powerful double attack. Black plays king to d8, then you play knight to a6, forking the king and queen. On the next move, you can capture the queen. If your opponent decides to play it safe and avoids capturing the extra pawn, they might instead try to simplify the position by trading off your aggressive knight in the center. However, after you recapture, they're forced to move their other knight, which only highlights that their earlier decision was flawed. This is the beauty of the Belgrade Gambit. Even seemingly natural and cautious moves often backfire. The moment black tries to neutralize the attack without fully understanding the tactics, they quickly find themselves in a worse position, struggling to recover. Let's say black plays knight to a7, and you respond with queen takes d4. Believe it or not, the game is practically over. Black's position is incredibly difficult to untangle, and they have no clear way to castle or develop smoothly. If you continue with normal development, you'll find that black's king remains vulnerable. Eventually, when you check the king, they'll realize they can't even move the dark-squared bishop without leaving the g7 pawn hanging. The most common reply from black is bishop to e7, hoping to castle, but you strike immediately with queen takes g7, threatening the rook and piling on pressure. If black tries counterplay bishop to f6, then you play rook to a1 with kokek. They often end up moving the king to d7, a desperate attempt to escape. But now the king is exposed in the center, and you can bring in more pieces for a crushing attack. This is the power of the Belgrade Gambit. Natural moves lead to chaos, and one mistake is all it takes to collapse the entire position. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this Belgrade Gambit trap, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more deadly chess tricks. Drop a comment if you've used this in your games, and I'll see you in the next one.